I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Tonight, we're going to end our request extravaganza of throwback albums with the 1988 release from Sonic Youth, Daydream Nation. A double album. It was the last album Sonic Youth recorded before signing to a major record label. And that's kind of a big deal for these guys because they definitely were kind of kings of the underground music scene of the late 80s when you have, a lot of you guys know what 80s music is. I mean, it encompassed, bands like all the hair metal bands and Metallica and all the crazy stuff that was going on in the world of pop music and the onset of, the industrial coming out of the 80s. And then you have Sonic Youth on this like alternative kind of post-punk band.
Kind of pre-grunge.
Yeah.
Very much influenced the grunge scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, a little bit more. Do you know any history about Sonic Youth, Daydream Nation, how this album plays as kind of a statement in rock music?
Yeah, well, they're definitely a very artsy band, but I don't mean artsy in like the high class New York kind of way. I mean in just it's all about expression.
Yeah,
exactly. They're hugely influenced by the kind of artsy sound of the Velvet Underground, another New York band, but then also like the raw power of Iggy and the Stooges. That kind of punk sound, but they incorporate a lot more noisy guitar. They're definitely trying to make a statement, and so that's just kind of the general sound. As I said, like kind of that pre-grunge. It's like grunge before grunge became tame. When it wasn't about 3 to 4 minute mainstream radio hits, when it was about 7 minute noise infused, just guitar heavy rock outs that really had something to say, and that's probably the most commendable factor of this album, I'd say.
Right.
But from there, I mean, it's very influential in its sound for that reason, because it combined a lot of things that had been done before, but it brought an authenticity, it brought an energy and an angst. And like I said, just that very confident, deliberate statement that they were trying to make.
Right. To me, if you like mood and you like guitar, this is a band that you just have to become obsessed with, and this is the album for you. And to me, those are two things that I love. So naturally, in listening, I actually have not been, really well versed in Sonic Youth. I'll come out and admit it. And fortunately for me, Velocities of Music is a great outlet to get me into all the stuff that arguably I just need to be in considering my taste.
Yeah.
Daydream Nation is a great album for me to listen to because it encompasses things that I love about music, such as really dark moods, contrast, dynamic contrast, aggressive guitars. The guitars on this album are just as clangy as you could. This defines clangy guitar, and it's just attacking you the entire time. And I love just that angst and aggression that is behind every single note that this band plays, and the bass and the drums and the guitars and the vocals. Everything just has just this boldness to it that I can't get over. I love that this album starts with the song Teenage Riot, and that's kind of almost an upbeat track.
Yeah.
And actually the first part of the album even encompasses a number of upbeat moments before kind of going off the deep end in the second half of the album. And I really feel like as this album transitions from front half to second half, you really get into the darker, more moodier complexions that Sonic Youth are trying to convey to you. And through tracks like Eric's Trip and in Total Trash, you really get a vibe that this band is, they're willing to take risks with their sound. They certainly aren't adhering to any traditional rock or pop conventions. I mean, just song structure, they just do what they want.
Yeah.
They're writing in music styles that really, how much is there to write on? They're really creating something unique here. And that's something that I just have to appreciate. And yet they're still able to not take their music so serious that every song is a downer, every song is an upper. They're just they know how to have that balance. And that's something I definitely appreciate.
Yeah. You're talking about the album kind of having these different sections and switching between moods, and I think a really important shift takes place right around the tracks Providence and Candle. Providence, it starts out with that really kind of low-key downer kind of piano thing, and then there's that like distorted phone call to Thurston or whatever, going on there, and then it goes into Candle, which Candle to me was definitely a highlight. That that song is all about mood. It busts into that kind of odd metered, I believe it's a 9 section, and then it just explodes from there. And that when I first got to that part of the album, I mean, this one also, just so you know, it is an album that I've listened to a few times before. I said a similar thing about like Jeff Buckley's Grace. And I've liked it in the past, but I've just never really dug into it.
Never
like
attached
I did.
to it.
Exactly. And so really listening to it with my reviewing hat on really gave me a different appreciation for this. And that was a moment for me when I got to that track for the first couple listens. I was like, wow, okay, you know, this really solidifies it for me. But really, I mean, it's a very long album.
It is.
It doesn't always feel that way to me. I mean, I enjoy it. The time flies by, and it's because you can tell that everything they put in there for a reason. It's not really too indulgent.
No, I struggle with a lot of double albums because it's hard to justify a double album to me.
It really is.
Unless you have some overarching concept, or like something like Baroness is Yellow and Green, where you're actually taking 2 albums and literally just mashing them together in 2 different sides of a sound. It's hard to justify the length. Sonic Youth, at times, I do feel like this album does feel long. However, at the same time, it flows so quickly when I'm listening to it that I don't notice the time going by, and therefore I think it's a fluid listen. So I actually think that I attribute a lot of their good songwriting in good album structure, even in 1988. Obviously, a lot of really great albums have come out by 1988 that have encompassed the album structure. So it's not surprising that they had the foresight to realize that they needed to organize their tracks a certain way. I just think that they did it in a really nice manner. I think that ending the album with the trilogy is actually one of the coolest ideas in an album structure format I've seen, because it just kind of gives closure to the album. It makes you think, okay, this is definitely the end, kind of like the finale at a 4th of July fireworks show. It's certainly something Muse has lifted over time. So overall, I just really got into the mood and the vibe and a lot of the great guitar work on this album, and just the general sense of angst in the vocals. I felt like they just captured it. They nailed it. This is an album that the more I listen to it, the more I love it, and the more I keep coming back to it. So I'm pumped to continue to listen to this album into the future. I'm going 93.
I'm gonna go 89. I really did like this album a lot. You liked it a little more than
I did.
me.
It's my cup of tea.
Yeah, I think this is one I'm gonna come back to and like more overall. And keep in mind, once again, that's not a comment on its historical significance. In that regard, it's definitely a 100. This album is hugely influential and very impressive. This is just where we're at with it right now in the beginning of 2013. We'll see where it goes.
Think about how many of the indie rock bands that are out there right now making music that's just paying way too much homage to this sound. I mean, it just kind of blows my mind. What is your favorite Sonic Youth album, and what makes Sonic Youth such a special band to you? Let us know at www.velocitiesmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesmusic. We got a ton of requests for this album, so really good to hear from you guys on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. Please follow us and like us on Facebook and Twitter, and make sure that you guys are starting a musical conversation with us and telling us what albums you're into, because we want to review them at some point in time. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
There it goes again.